And I'd say for the most part, I rarely see a company with a good go-to-market strategy. So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you can put together a really compelling go-to-market strategy, you're going to be that much further ahead than everyone else out there. In my day job, I'm a venture capitalist, which means I'm pretty much looking at startup pitches day in, day out. And I'd say for the most part, I rarely see a company with a good go-to-market strategy. So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you can put together a really compelling go-to-market strategy, you're going to be that much further ahead than everyone else out there. Why put together a good go-to-market strategy? Well, number one, if you want to raise capital, you're going to need one. But often people refer to this challenge of crossing the chasm, which is really about going from selling your product in very small volumes to those early adopters who are willing to accept a product with all its flaws, they're willing to pay premium prices, to really selling your product to the majority of customers out there, the early majority, the late majority. And if you ever want to be a successful startup, you must reach that majority. And in order to get there, you're going to need to be very focused in who you're targeting. You're going to need to understand what is the whole product to serve the needs of that larger mass market, among very many other things. So let's just jump into it right now. Traditionally, when you looked at kind of the old school view, I call it, of a go-to-market strategy, people kind of first thought about, what's my product? Let's get it all built out here. And then, okay, hey, who are we going to sell this to? Which was usually the whole market, of course. And just start with whatever piece of that market happened to be geographically close to them. And then start to figure out, well, I guess we need to figure out how are we going to sell it? Are we going to do personal selling? Are we going to sell through retailers? And this is probably before e-commerce was really going in a big way. And then most people really, how to promote the product was a bit of an afterthought, and most kind of marketing departments didn't get a lot of attention in traditional companies. This has obviously been changing a lot. If you take one example of kind of a new age startup here that's been very successful, we all know Tesla. And I can tell you Tesla didn't build that car and then think about who they were going to sell it to and think about then, how they might sell it, where they might promote it. Tesla did this go-to-market strategy through an iterative approach. So they knew the capabilities their technology had, but they didn't just say, hey, this is battery powered, so we're going to sell it to the green consumer. Does that picture look like the kind of picture you would have if you're selling this to a bunch of Birkenstock-wearing environmentalists? No. They were very thoughtful in figuring out who they were going to target. And they spent a lot of time thinking about how they were going to sell it, because all the traditional channels of selling automobiles through the dealer network were completely closed to them, which is why today Tesla's just jumped over that and they have their own stores and they sell direct online as well. They spent a lot of time thinking about how all of this holds together and had a very refined go-to-market strategy. It's why they succeeded where many others failed. So if you look at go-to-market strategy today, my opinion is this is really, this isn't a linear process. This all needs to happen in an iterative process. And you might start with the what, you might start with the who, the how, or the where, but you're going to go back and continuously tweak and evaluate everything until it all hangs together in a very tight way. Tonight I'm going to explain go-to-market by looking at a few Mars clients. These are companies here who have been working with the Mars practice in the Cleantech space for quite a while. One is a company called Circuit Meter. They have a technology which is installed in a big commercial building like this at the circuit level. They install some hardware. All that data goes up to the cloud to give you full visibility into how energy is being used in a building. So we'll talk a bit about Circuit Meter when we look at what their go-to-market strategy should be. And Lifebike, more of a consumer product, a really cool, fun-to-ride, innovative electric bike, which is a very unique riding position. It's super lightweight, and they're just launching that product as well. So we'll talk about how they should be thinking about their go-to-market strategy. So for no particular reason, we'll start with the what. That's often where everybody in this room is starting when they're thinking about a product, but I wouldn't say that's the optimal place to start. You really need to think through all components. So when we think about what we're selling, really here you're talking about the value proposition. You're not selling a technology. What you're selling are the benefits. And you really need to think, what are those unique benefits I'm offering? How are they unique from competitors out there? And are you going to compete on cost? Are you going to compete on your differentiation? Are you going to be kind of a Me Too product like an HTC phone that is much, much cheaper but gives you about the same amount of benefits as perhaps an iPhone? Or are you going to be the iPhone in the market, offer superior everything at a premium price? Once you figure that out, you can take those benefits and think about, the overall value proposition is those benefits minus the cost. And the cost just isn't the financial cost of the product. You need to think about all the costs. For most startups, the number one challenge for someone adopting your product is the risk of using something new. Particularly if you're a large business. It was always safe to buy from a large blue chip customer like an IBM. I know I've started a couple businesses where I've been selling the product to large corporations, and for them to get over that biggest cost, which to them was the risk, their price had to be really, really low, much lower than anything out there, and the benefits had to be much, much superior to anything in the market. And for most startups, that is the case. You need to be both, far superior on the benefit side and much cheaper. And you should also think, on consumer products, often some of the biggest costs are the switching barriers. I mean, is anyone out there still holding an iPhone or a BlackBerry? We got very high switching barriers over here. We don't know what it's going to take for this guy to switch to an iPhone, but we'll eventually get him there. So you can see those switching barriers can sometimes be the highest cost of adopting a new product. So for circuit meter, we're not going to talk about the technology they use, their ability to analyze the sine waves, looking at upper harmonics. We're going to think about those benefits they're solving or delivering. They can find energy problems faster, measure solution payback, which others can't do. For Life Bike, you're really selling things like it's a compact, easy to store in your very small apartment, comfortable riding position. The other thing that needs to be considered is the whole solution. Most people don't think about the entire stack of requirements to sell to the broader market. They start with the very base core solution, but they never really go beyond that. And often you need to form partnerships to go beyond that. If we take an example here being circuit meter, they deliver the hardware that gets installed in the building. They deliver the cloud portal where all the data is sent to. But they don't do installation, and they can't do installation. So they need to build out that national network of installers to make it easy for people to buy their device and get it installed. They have some great analytical tools, but they're not as advanced as what they could get through other existing analytical software. So they should form those partnerships to further build out the whole product stack to make it much more attractive to consumers. They need to have consultants who can come in and advise building owners on what to do with that data, how to drive various energy-saving applications. And then there's a lot of really interesting stuff they can do in the future, which they need to start thinking about, which will really differentiate this product. Fingerprinting of different electrical loads in the building, perhaps some learning algorithms that allow them to automate some energy savings in a building. That's the whole product stack. And that's going to be what they deliver to the majority of the market. You will get some early adopters who will purchase this product, with just the basic solution. But you need to start thinking about the whole solution for the broader market. Let's talk about the who. And this is where I usually see, the biggest issues when a startup comes in and pitches. What I usually see is this pie diagram. And I hear the entrepreneur tell me that this market is a $100 billion market and they're going to capture only 1%. And that's how they're going to be a billion-dollar company. I mean, I pretty much show them the door at that point. A market is, made up of all these little tiny segments. And you need to figure out how to break down that large market into all these micro segments. And you need to have an extremely focused strategy for how you're going to target that segment. If we take Life Bike as an example, what I'd recommend is they break down the market with some easily identifiable criteria, because if they're not easily identifiable, you're not going to be able to break down this market. So let's just keep it really simple here. Life Bike could break down their market by sex. They could then further do it by whether someone lived in the urban core, further break it down by age. And if they kept doing this, what they'd end up with at the end is all these little segments. And they could apply kind of a dollar value or a size to each of those segments. Then what they could do is look at the benefits and the needs of those segments and the benefits their bike provides compared to other bikes in the marketplace. So their bike might be kind of more portable, easier to store. It might have a nice riding position, and you obviously don't sweat when you're riding an electric bike. And they could look at which of this, they could do some primary research, customer surveys, phone calls, get out and actually meet with those customers and collect that primary research, and start to place those segments in terms of their needs on that map and look at which has the most overlap with the benefits that Life Bike is delivering in the marketplace. And in this case, you could see that there's a few segments that are falling within kind of their sweet spot there. And you might have university students and perhaps even female professionals working downtown. Now you need to go one step further, because targeting university students, they might not have the propensity to spend on a bike like this. So you need to think about this a little further. So you would then take these segments and you could break them out by, you've already figured out the market size, you've figured out the needs and solution fit. Now you need to look at their available kind of, the size of their wallets, their ability to spend on this, whether it be a business or a consumer, their ability to spend money on this application. And you should also think about other factors such as the market concentration, and we'll get into this when we talk about the how you're going to reach those groups. If it's a very fragmented market, it might be hard to go after that market, whereas if it's a very concentrated, easy to reach segment, it would be much more attractive to go after. And then you can talk about market access, because certain ways of reaching those target markets will be closed. There might be no room left in the channel. You might need to go through a retailer that is not going to carry your product as a startup. Maybe this needs to be sold through a Costco, but your chances of getting into a Costco are pretty much zero as a startup. And then once you've done that, what I'd love to see and rarely see is a very focused rollout. So again, I'm using an example being Circuit Meter here. They might have decided the most optimal market segment for them to target is this MUSH, I call it. This is the municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals. Much more attractive than, say, big commercial buildings like the Mars building here. And they might have decided that the most attractive place to start is where electricity prices are highest, that being in the southwest of the United States. So they would focus all their energy there, and if their focus was even more narrow than that, I would be very happy with that approach. And then they can concentrate their resources, and as they have success in that market, they can start to roll out both geographically and into markets that have other needs. This will really allow you to cross that chasm and reach that mass market out there. So I'm going to quickly touch on the how and the where. So how do we go and target that little narrow segment we're going after? There's a lot of factors to consider. Today we have so many different channel options for getting a product to market. Probably the most prominent being now e-commerce or the web, and that's a very direct channel. When you take that channel, usually now the where are you going to promote this? Where are you going to find the customers, attract them to your website, or if you have your product positioned on Amazon or some other online marketplace, the where becomes extremely important. Just listing it there is not going to get products sold. You have direct personal selling, which is very useful when you have a complex product that requires a lot of explanation. So typically B2B sales are done through personal selling. Insurance, something none of us really want to go buy, is done through personal selling because nobody's out there looking for insurance on a daily basis. And then you have the traditional retail channels. indirect distributor channels where they may then go to other retailers and eventually to the end consumer. And you also have another interesting channel that most should consider, and that's that private labeling where you go and sell your product to someone who has a very strong brand in the marketplace. Lifebike might take their bike and go to a Trek or someone with a really well-known name, and there's many different ways you could structure that relationship, but it might allow them to actually achieve more than they ever could alone. So we talked about the where being very important when you are using a channel like e-commerce. And when you think about your promotional plan, here you're going to need to think about, what are all the sources that you can use for promoting this product that are very closely going to align with your target market. So when you're doing a research on each of your target markets, you're also going to be doing research on which sources they're using for getting their information. This is particularly important in the B2B environment when you're looking at, where are the decision makers getting their information? Is it from other individuals in the industry? Is it from other very specific publications? Word of mouth, maybe in some situations. When you look at what Tesla did, they did something very unique where they decided the main way they were going to promote this product, besides all the free PR they were getting, was test drives. Once you drive one of those Teslas, you are absolutely going to love this thing, and you're going to go tell every friend you have that this was the most amazing vehicle you've ever driven. And you might post a YouTube video, and it just goes viral after that. They decided they didn't need to be spending on big television ads like every other automobile company out there. It's so critical to get that messaging right when you're out there promoting that product. You're going to spend a lot of time promoting it, so make sure you get the message right. And that's really talking about, what are you selling? Who is this product for? What is your target market? Make sure people understand that product's for them. What are the compelling reasons to buy? And how you differ from other competitors in the marketplace. Spend a lot of time on that, and that can even be your elevator pitch when you're talking to VCs or customers.